Hi, I'm John and welcome to the Jigsaw Puzzler. Today's puzzle is this one. It's called the Rosetta Stone. It was produced by the British Museum and it is an 800-piece puzzle. This puzzle is the first irregularly shaped puzzle that I have ever owned or done. I have one circular puzzle, and all the rest of my puzzles would be rectangular, either portrait or landscape rectangles. But this is the first puzzle that I've ever done, I think, that is not a standard shape. It is, in fact, in the shape of the Rosetta Stone, which is depicted here on the cover of the box. All right, so let's have a look at the back of the box here. The back tells us a little bit about the Rosetta Stone, and I might just read that out by way of background because that will help explain what it is we're looking at here and a bit more about the details. So, the Rosetta Stone was discovered in 1799 by French soldiers in the village of El Rashid, Rosetta, in the western desert of the Nile River. Western delta, of the Nile River. By this time, all knowledge of the ancient Egyptian scripts had been lost for over 1,000 years. So hieroglyphs were unreadable until the discovery of this. The known Greek section, so the bottom here, consisting of 53 lines of text, helped scholars decipher the two Egyptian sections above it. The middle one is written in a cursive script called Demotic, and there are 32 lines of writing, and the top version is in traditional, what we would say is traditional Egyptian hieroglyphs, and 14 lines there. The text contains a decree from 196 BC, establishing a cult in the temples in honour of the new king, Ptolemy V Epiphanes, king of all Egypt. So we have three language scripts here, which are the same text in three different languages, or two different languages, but hieroglyphic and demotic. The grey granitoid stone weighs 762 kilos. It is incomplete and was probably originally another 50 centimetres higher, perhaps with a rounded top and a carving of the king on it. All right, so what we have is a large stone, a depiction of a large stone with inscriptions in three scripts, three languages on it, and describing a decree, a royal decree. All right, so I've made some notes here, and I just want to make sure I cover everything that I've got here because there's quite a lot that we can say about this puzzle, even though looks like a fairly uninteresting in some ways image. There's a lot that this puzzle can teach us. Firstly, the pieces are, apart from the edge, all the pieces are the standard puzzle shape, 2 in, 2 out. So either a horizontal like that one or a vertical like that, absolutely standard all over, apart from the edges, which are very irregular. Secondly, the divisions between the three sections have got a thick or wider grey line of the actual stone itself dividing them, and you can distinguish between the alphabets and the characters or the scripts where those dividing lines go when you're doing the puzzle. The image on the box is the text that is on the stone. However, the image on the box is not exactly the image on the puzzle. If we had an image of the puzzle, it would have the grey background with the white writing on it here and the black outline edge. On the box, it's completely black with white writing on it. So it does not give you the gradations of colour of the shades of grey that happen across the puzzle. Okay, so that's about talking about that, the piece shapes. I purchased this second-hand, so I did not know if it was going to be complete. Fortunately, it is. Some of the pieces are not fully interlocking along the edge. Some of them are pieces that just butt up against the next one because of the irregular shape that we're dealing with here. Some of the pieces are very tiny. Here's one. Very, very tiny pieces along the edge, and some of them are quite big in comparison. Right? So you get great variance in size of pieces along the edge, but in the middle, all standard piece shape, roughly standard puzzle piece sizes. All right, when I opened this secondhand puzzle, inside was a note. And the note says, 9 out of 10, very difficult puzzle, unless you read Egyptian. Edge is unusual, all pieces here, pieces fit well. The middle section in demotic script is hardest, trial and error. And then a date, the 13th of the 3rd, 2024. So that's from a previous owner, probably the previous owner, immediate to my purchase of this. That was a very interesting find. I've never had a note, a review of a puzzle from a previous owner inside the box. It was really quite handy to do, or to have. So 9 out of 10, they obviously really liked it. And I would agree that this is a 9 out of 10 puzzle. It fits together well, it's good quality, thick pieces, not very glossy. It's challenging, without a doubt. It says very difficult puzzle, and they're not wrong, but it is a good challenge rather than a depressing challenge. And I would give this 9 out of 10. The way the pieces fit together is lovely. There are no false fits despite the very similar piece shapes that it's made of. I was very pleasantly surprised to find that out. The other thing about the piece fit is that sometimes a piece will fit into a spot that it does not belong, and it seems to fit, but you can look at the details on it to see whether a line crosses from one piece into another or something like that. But when you do fit the two pieces together that do go together, they fit beautifully. They fit so nicely, and you can tell that that is the right piece in the right place. So it's got a feel to it. The way it goes together feels right. And of course, if you look at it closely, you can trace the lines from one piece to another to see, yes, that in fact, visually it goes together as well as just this beautiful feel, that it's very satisfying that when you find the right piece, that it fits so neatly. And no other piece fits in that spot quite so neatly, even though some might come quite close. So really, I'd say there's no false fits with this one. If you watch the time lapse, it's a very fast time lapse, so you might not notice that there are some times where I put a piece in the wrong spot and then take it out and put it in another one and shift it around like that. But I'm feeling for the fit as much as looking for the fit. All pieces were here. The person has said that is correct. The pieces fit well, and that is also true. Very, very true here. And the previous owner, the middle section in demotic script is hardest, trial and error. Yes, 100% yes to that. By far the hardest part of the puzzle. I think the edge wasn't too bad. Some parts of the edge which were a little bit difficult to know from the beginning where exactly they went, because there wasn't quite enough information on them, and this butting up against the next piece business, you weren't, until you got someone around to join it into a block, sometimes you weren't 100% sure what was supposed to go where, but that was okay. In terms of the three scripts, I would think that the hieroglyphs was the easiest part. I think that's because, firstly, it's the smallest section. Secondly, it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cartouches, which are royal names in hieroglyphs at various points in that part of the image. And those pieces are very easy to pull out. You can pick them out of quite readily and put those together. So it means you start forming little islands of completedness within that section. And thirdly, hieroglyphic script is very pictorial. So you're looking actually at very, very small pictures. You've got crowns, you've got people, you've got birds, lots and lots of things which only have one way up. Egyptians might have sometimes written left to right, right to left with the hieroglyphs, but they always did them the right way up. They didn't write them upside down. So that made the hieroglyph section probably the easiest part of the whole puzzle to do. The Greek section at the bottom. Now, I recognize Greek letters. I can probably sound out the words, even though I don't understand Greek myself. I couldn't tell you what it says, but I can read it. That was good too, because again, with an alphabetic script like Greek, the letters go one way up. So you could sort your pieces into knowing which way up the script went. The demotic, though, I'm completely unfamiliar with demotic scripts. It has curvy swashes that look faintly Arabic, but even I'm not 100% like really au fait with Arabic script. This was very difficult to tell which way was up. So there was a lot of trial and error. The person who wrote the note, the middle section is the hardest, trial and error. Well, they were right. There's no doubt about that they were right. Okay, so how did I go about solving this puzzle? Particularly when the image wasn't exactly the same color-wise in terms of the box, and that I had this note telling me that this middle section was going to kill me. So I took out all the edge pieces. So you've got this distinctive black line all the way around, and of course the irregular shape with no tabs outside of it. So pulled those out and was able to start piecing those together with not too much difficulty. The black line varies in thickness, so that does help you to see which piece is the next one that goes along. And often they've got a fragment of the script, whichever of the three it is, so you can sort the edges into the hieroglyph edges, the demotic edges, and the Greek edges, so that you know which third of the puzzle you're dealing with. There is a wide band of grey at the bottom here on the stone. That wasn't very difficult to put together either. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pieces there which have no script on them and no black edge, but obviously 6 pieces is not hard to sort out which order they go in. That was very easy. There's also this bald patch, if you like, where possibly some of the writing has chipped off it or something like that. And so you've got this blob of the stone here floating in the middle of the Greek section. Finding that wasn't too hard, and putting that together felt very satisfying. It felt like I was making progress and actually getting something done that was in the middle of the puzzle, not just the edge. So put together most of the edge first, and then I thought I'm going to attack this language by language, and I did the Greek first, mostly because I can read the letters. So I pulled out all of the Greek words and then sorted them into the sideways, the horizontals and the verticals. And then what I thought I would do, rather than going piece by piece and kind of slogging my way through it, I thought, well, each one of those verticals has to join onto one of the horizontals. There is no other way of completing the puzzle. So what I tried to do was look at the color background, the size of the letters, because it does vary greatly in size. There are some quite small sections. There are some where the words are spread out a bit further, where the lines are spread further apart, and try to piece together pairs of pieces. Because I thought, well, I don't know how many pieces are there. Probably out of an 800-piece puzzle, there might be 350-ish. No, not quite. 250 pieces-ish in this section. So I thought, well, I need to reduce that, and one way is to halve it by getting pairs of pieces together. So I actually managed to construct quite a number of pairs of pieces. In fact, some rows of 3 or 4 pieces that I could just then move a whole section and see if it slotted in. And that seemed to be a reasonable way of going about solving the Greek section. The other thing about the Greek is, because I recognised the letters, I could actually follow along the lines and see what came next in a gap and say, okay, I need that letter on a tab. So I'd look at all those and find every piece with that letter on it and piece it in until I got the right one. So there was a bit of trial and error with the Greek, a bit of piecing together to make groups of pieces that then I could move around, and then finally the Greek part came together. I should say that this took me hours and hours over many days, late into the night, slogging away at this puzzle. It was not easy. I thought, of course, I do a lot of 1,000 piece puzzles. I mostly do 1,000 piece puzzles. 800 pieces, how hard could that be? Well, let me tell you just how hard that can be. So, yeah, piecing the Greek together took quite a few days of fairly persistent slogging at it in the evenings, predominantly. Then I moved on to the hieroglyph section. I thought, well, I've done a huge slab of the puzzle here. The Greek section seems to be perhaps the biggest section. I'm not sure about that. It takes up a fair proportion of the puzzle. So I thought I'd give myself a break and I'll do the hieroglyphic section, because I reckoned I could put the hieroglyphs together in not too much time. And I was right, because it's a smaller section. It has these cartouches, which are easy to pick out. It has only 14 lines, so the text with the hieroglyphics is much bigger. And of course, the pictures. I could piece together two halves of an image. So I pieced together cartouches first, and then I thought, well, I'm going to start with the birds. Any bird that was cut in half by the join between two pieces, I tried to piece the two halves of the bird together, the tail and feet with the head or something like that. So I think the birds were a good way to go with that, because there are many somewhat generic shapes in there, like the shape of an eye, some with an eyeball or an iris or a pupil, and some without. There are some hieroglyphs with quite straight lines that might represent palm trees or something like that. So they were going to be more challenging, but the birds, there are enough of the birds across there to try to piece them together, to put two halves together, and eventually that did come together reasonably quickly, especially compared to the Greek. So I was pleased with that. So you'll see on the time lapse I did the Greek, then the hieroglyphs, and then I had this great section in the middle, the demotic. Now, according to the note, it was the hardest and trial and error. So I thought, right, there's only one thing for it. I did a full piece sort of what I thought was the right way. It was vertical and horizontal. Some pieces looked ambiguous. They looked like they could go either way. So I made a decision on them and put them in one or the other, and I just stuck with it. And then I went piece by piece. So across the puzzle here, for example, when I had the edge between the demotic and the Greek, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 19, 20, 21, 22. Okay, so I had 22 pieces across. So that meant 11 with tabs sticking up and 11 with tabs sticking down. So the sticking up tabs were going to have a horizontal piece attached to them. The down tab holes was going to have a vertical piece in it. So I needed to look for 11 horizontals and 11 verticals that went in each line. So what I did was I started with the horizontals, and I went through every single horizontal until I had the 11 in along that line, which meant that now I had a zigzag shape that had the inward tab hole for 22 vertical pieces. I hope that makes sense. In the time lapse, you'll probably see that I've got these zigzag shapes going all the way across the puzzle for most of the middle section, because I decided to step it that way. And I thought, well, there are so many pieces on each side. If with each go across piece by piece, I could eliminate 22 pieces at a time out of there, gradually these piles would reduce to the point where it was not such a challenge. And yes, there was a lot of trial and error, backwards and forwards, rotating the piece and back again with the same piece, so that I could tell which way up the piece went. So I started with 22, piecing in 22 verticals. When I found all or most of those, I went for the 22 horizontals in the next lot, and then so on and so on, and just built it up gradually. That took a long time, but I felt that there was no other reasonable way to do it at all. I have to say, this was hard on my back. My back is actually reasonably sore from leaning over and trying piece by piece by piece by piece by piece. Whereas if I had a 1,000-piece puzzle here or something else, even if it was a bit difficult, there's no way I would have an entire slab section like that I'd be going piece by piece and slogging it out. There'd be some feature in it, some way of breaking it down, even if it was a sky section with clouds, gradations of the blue colour, something like that would tell me roughly where pieces went. But this, totally, I can't read demotic. I couldn't tell which way up the script was, and the gradations of the colour in the background, the grey colour of the stone, is so subtle that it's quite challenging to figure out where across the puzzle, and it is uneven, it's sort of patchy, so you can't go by the background colour. So there I was slogging it away, and last night, finally, at about midnight, finally got it all together, and then went to bed quite sore. So that's how I put the puzzle together. I would, if we go through the note, 9 out of 10, yes. Very difficult puzzle, yes. Unless you read Egyptian, or which I don't. The edge is unusual, yes. All pieces here, yes. The pieces fit well, yes. The middle section is the hardest, trial and error, yes. So the previous owner was right on the money with their review, and I do appreciate knowing that ahead of time. One of the questions I think is, well, why did I persist with doing a puzzle that was so challenging and so difficult when just a few episodes ago I introduced the puzzle called Through the Windscreen by Cressida Campbell, which I gave up on. I did about 2/3 of it and gave up on the sky and the water sections of that puzzle, and I promised that I would never do it, never finish that puzzle, and I'm not going to. So why did I persist with this one and not that one? Well, that comes down to puzzle fit. This one had no genuine false fits on it, and the pieces, once you had it in the right spot, even if it was, only attached on one side, you knew it was the right place because it fit so beautifully. Whereas the Cressida Campbell puzzle, any piece could have gone anywhere and it just didn't fit nicely. So I persisted with this because it did have a beautiful fit, and I knew that eventually it would come out, and that if I put a piece in a spot and it fits so well, both visually and with the feel of it, then I knew it was in the right spot, and I didn't have to worry about undoing whole sections and redoing them just to get it right. So I persisted with this one, and also I do occasionally like a really challenging puzzle, and for the moment this has provided that challenge. I think the last really challenging puzzle I did was the Saltwater People, the Australian Indigenous artwork with the dots in circles and on it. This would be as challenging as that one, but in a different way. So that's kind of why I persisted with this, and I do occasionally like to do a challenging puzzle, and I think it's good for us to do challenging puzzles from time to time. All right, so the time lapse. I have put a time lapse. I did film the whole thing, and it literally took hours to film it, hours and hours, because I was at it. Progress was so slow. So what I've done is I filmed it in time lapse, so sped up with the camera, and then in the software that I used to stitch it all together, I've actually sped it up again. So I think what you will see won't take very long, but it is sped up at 160 times the speed that I actually did it. So I was phenomenally slow with this puzzle. If I had filmed it at normal speed, the speed I actually did it at, watching me do it would have been like watching paint dry. It would have been awful and uninteresting, and nobody would have slogged their way to the end of it. I'm pretty sure about that. So I've sped it up super so that you can just see how the puzzle developed, and you can watch as I go through piece by piece, row by row, fitting. And you can watch, it's quite soothing actually. I've watched it sped up to see what it makes it almost looks animated, the pieces moving along the sides until they all disappear into the sections. So I hope you do enjoy that. Stick around for the time lapse if you want to. Thank you for watching. If you can click like and subscribe, I'd really appreciate that, so that you can stay up to date with the latest episodes. And let's have the time lapse now. Thank you.